Hey guys, Loman02. Currently getting ready to play you a recorded game of old school MTG. And if you're not familiar with the format, it involves cards that are from pre-1995, so 93, 94, which goes up to Fallen. Well, correction, this version of it's not playing Fallen Empires. However, technically 94, end of 94, I believe November was when Fallen Empires became a legal set. So this is a deck I'm playing in this first game. I think previously you've seen me play the deck, which is Brian Weissman's invention. It is essentially just a card advantage engine. The deck itself is, and was one of the first, codified control strategies. Weiss a lot of the combo and aggro in the format. This deck right here is something completely different. So what this deck is looking to do is just win quickly. So it has the most efficient threats available in the old school format, and seeks to close out the game through use of cards like Unstable Mutation, Flying Men, which is just simply a 1/1 flying, playable in this sort of constructed, Curd Ape, and then you have the Bolt package, Chain Lightning, and Lightning Bolt here for direct damage to the face and or removal. It has some utility there. Time Walk, because it's great in decks like this. It's essentially a Delver deck, is the way I think you need to look at it. Serendipity, which is a 3-mana 3/4, is an awesome rate in this format. We do have Wheel of Fortune and Time Twister for draw, because this deck itself can run very rapidly out of gas, and being able to draw 7 cards, well, in some matchups not being great, is generally pretty good for this style of deck, because the only way we have to draw cards are these two, the Ancestral and the Library of Alexandria. Library of Alexandria definitely does not shine its best in this deck, because it's typically looking to reduce its hand size rapidly. But when you have it in an opener, it tends to pay to play with it, to basically suck down the opponent's removal and 1-for-1 them until you can gain relative advantage through use of Library. Top end, one of the best 4-drops in the format, Ernham Djinn. Obviously, 4-drop creatures, obviously like Moat, the Abyss, are pretty much a hard lock against Ernham Djinn, but Ernham Djinn itself is just big. It's huge. We don't tend to care if our opponent's trying to race us, because this deck's going to be generally faster than almost anything else it's playing in the format, because it has the most efficient threats, most efficient burn, etc. We do have one Miser Sylvan Library, which I guess I lied, is also technically a draw engine as well, and can be used against some of the more controlling matchups to kind of gain some advantage. Also have Psionic Blast, which, while not as efficient as Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning, 4 damage is an awful lot, and helps you deal with threats like Seer Angel or, in the mirror, Serendipity, if you need to knock some blockers out of the way. As you look at the sideboard here, we have basically the Blast package, 3 Blue Elemental Blast and 4 Red Elemental Blast. The Blue Elemental Blast is primarily for Blood Moon, because this deck cannot deal with enchantments very easily. Blue Elemental Blast tends to be pretty good, although I think probably some number of Artifact Blasts need to go in as well, because this deck heavily relies on Arabian Nights cards, and a common sideboard card in the format is City in a Bottle, which gets the Serendipity, the Ernham Djinn, the Unstable Mutation, I believe, is in that format, Flying Men, Cities of Brass, and then the Library of Alexandria. As a note, this mana base is actually kind of interesting. It does have both a Mana Crypt and a Soul Ring, because they tend to lead to more turn 1 or turn 2 Serendib Freets, or and or Ernham Djinns. Standard Mox package for a deck that's only 3 colors, just 3 of them, because we don't really need the colorless. This is more of a color-intensive deck. But as you look at the sideboard, we actually don't have the generally standard in 3 to 4 color decks for City of Brass. We only have 2, and I've done that intentionally. 1, it helps abate races, and 2, cards like Curd Ape are generally pretty dependent on having both land types, so I tend to not want to use City of Brass to cast my spells, but in a pinch it's obviously good. This is one thing I'm debating. I only currently have 2 Mishra's Factories in here. It's possible I want to go to 4, because it is just a premier threat in the format, although it does die to most of the common forms of removal, excluding Terror. But Lightning Bolt deals with it, Disenchant deals with it, and Swords to Plowshares deals with it. Of note, you'll see that we're not playing white, which does take out the basically 2 of the better removal spells in the format, Disenchant and Swords to Plowshares. But, in its stead, we gain much more efficient threats. So at the cost of answers, we've given ourselves threats. Another card I'm kind of on the edge about is Mana Drain. I don't often find that I want to tap out for a Mana Drain. It could be Then it needs to turn into another Ernham Djinn, or it may just need to turn into like Argothian Pixies to kind of hedge against the artifact matchup. As you go on the board, we have 2 Whirling Dervishes. The card's very powerful against mono black. It just blanks, a turn 1, not Serendib, but Juzam Djinn. Shatter, because artifacts are pretty big in this format. It helps deal with opposing Mishra's Factories, which, tend to be tougher to deal with, although we do have Bolt and Psyblast to get it. But it's also just good against the Shops decks, because there are Shops decks in the format, and, blowing up, their turn 2 Triskevelius, or their turn 2 Juggernaut, is not bad. Tranquility, again, enchantments are a problem for this deck. Naturalize is not a thing in this format, it's only disenchant. So this allows you to deal with moon effects. It also allows you to deal with things like Moat and things like the Abyss, which are the 2 worries this deck has, because it just needs to erase them, essentially, in the unboarded matchup. Energy Flux, it's a house against artifact decks, kind of just a sure hoser. Not entirely sure it shouldn't be a Force Shatterer and or like a first Tormod's Crypt. The Red Elemental Blast are just very efficient counter spells. I often find I at least have 1 mana available in which I can either cast a Bolt or hold up Red Elemental Blast to stop stuff like, opposing Time Twisters, Psionic Blast against my Serendib, Efreet, which, other than Swords of Plowshare is one of the only removal spells that'll get it. Well, I guess Terror, but Terror is not all that common. Terror is actually one of the least common removal spells used unless it's mono black. But even then, they tend to use Paralyze, because it tends to be pretty good against most of the premier threats, to include opposing Juzam Djinns or Serendib Efreets. But this is the deck, and I'll go into the 2-game set we played with this deck. This is my 2nd or 3rd time playing it. I built it probably about 2-3 days ago. It's not extremely sophisticated. I mean, it just, essentially harnesses the best threats in the format. So this is my opener. Sylvan Library, a slower card. In the dark, I think it's worth keeping, though, because it's going to allow me to get some selection. And if I'm playing against control, just let me draw tons of cards. Opponent plays the best card in the format, Library of Alexandria. However, we have this sort of deck that can it's actually not that great against, because we can essentially, like in the blue mirrors, where it's like Delver versus a big blue deck in Vintage, we can force them to get off the library plan to answer the stuff on board that we play to kill them. And there's no Force of Will in this format. So I end up keeping both these cards, because I figure they're on a slow draw with Library of Alexandria. Library of Alexandria will tend to make folks keep worse hands. They go ahead and play on a Birds of Paradise. We draw into more cards. I actually keep the Bolt here and opt to play out the Curd Ape, and the Unstable Mutation. I do bolt the birds out of the way just to slow them down, because I feel like, I'm in a lower life. They played a Taiga, and Taiga does mean they probably have a Bolt deck or a Fireball deck. So I don't want to get them to a point where they have enough mana to actually kill me, because I plan on drawing out of, if I get into Land Screw like I did there, drawing out of it. So I'm at 6, which means I could die to several things. But they're dead on the following turn, so I put them in a position where, they have to kill me now, and they don't have it. They don't have 2 bolts. So they Psionic Blast me. I go down to 1, see my top couple, just keep the Curd Ape, and then attack for lethal here. So, basically, deck plays out like RUG Delver in a lot of ways. It's a little less efficient than that deck, obviously, but its premier threat, which is Serendib, Efreet, and Ernham Djinn, tend to keep opponents on their toes, and they play around bolts. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this very short video, or this short game, and we're going to go to game 2, which actually plays out kind of similarly, because our opponent, again, keeps a Loa draw, which I can't blame them for. Library of Alexandria is very powerful, but also they're playing a lot of different colors, and none of them specifically white, which is the one that I worry about the most, because white tends to mean they have good removal. I play on a Birds here. What I have to do is just Unstable Mutation my threat, attack. If they want to block, I'm cool with that. And they're not 0 to not block, but when they don't, I decide to bolt it. Again, to slow their roll, essentially, to keep them from being able to cast their spells they need. And it keeps them off both white and blue mana, because while I've assumed they're not on white, I don't know they're not on white or blue. It appears they're just straight Jund, though. I figured this is going to be I knew it was an X spell. I figured it was probably going to be Mind Twist, which would have been infinitely worse for me. But they just bolt my Serendib, and I'm fine with that. I bolt him for 3. Hit for 5, put him to 5. At this point, they probably need to bolt this Flying Man, or else they're probably going to die. We do find out they do have the Bolt. They go to bolt our threat. Cool. That's some card advantage there, but I'm not really worried about that, because as you look, their threats are just really expensive. I go ahead and Psionic Blast them, take 1 off my City of Brass, pass it back to or gets passed back to me. I cast the Chain Lightning out and put him to -2 and win the game. So, that was this game of Old School. Old School Jund versus, essentially RUG. I call it Ernham RUG, but, I'm not sure what the best threat it is. Frankly, it vacillates. Depending on the matchup, Flying Men and Unstable Mutation is one of the best things you can be doing because it just generally gets under counter magic. Curd Ape is also obviously a premier threat in the deck, but while it is very efficient, what it does lose is that it dies to Bolt, and it also is pretty horrendous against Moat. But as you'll note, we do have 8 flying threats plus a ton of burn in the format, so we can generally play around Moat. The card that I think we have to worry about the most, at least early, is an early resolved Abyss, the Abyss, because that will tend to lock us out of the game. So I hope you guys enjoyed this short series on the old school format. Again, this is RUG Delver, for lack of a better term. But the deck performed pretty well here. Although our opponent had some slower draws, maybe they're on a slower deck. But it kind of shows that, well, Library of Alexandria is easily the most powerful card over a long enough time horizon in old school. If the opponent's not given time, then they will tend to lose, to decks like this where we just have efficient threats, efficient, damage spells at the cost of economy. So you're able to, Library over a long enough time frame is going to just outcard anyone, and it's just going to increase your card economy. But if your card efficiency can go suitably underneath it, then that card economy can be rendered moot in the long enough game. Which is kind of what we showed here in these two games. Well, maybe not interesting. It just kind of is an interesting expose on, what Library of Alexandria is not great against. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the short series on the old school format. If it's a format that interests you, I hope sometime you friend me on MTGO, and we're able to play a couple games, because it's a very fun format, and it's tough in real life to actually get a game of it, even if you have the cards assembled, because, not a lot of folks do, and it takes travel. So, take care now, and enjoy.